Steve, we have 6 different Switch 2 games to talk about. A bunch of stuff has come out recently, some really interesting ports. One of them's a Switch 1 game, actually. But let's go through these pretty quickly, because there's a lot to talk about here. And maybe the most interesting one to begin with is Kena Bridge of Spirits. This was one of the coolest looking PS5 games, maybe 4 years ago. And it got a slightly downgraded PS4 port, which this one is largely based off. And we've put it head-to-head with the PS5 version, because unfortunately I haven't got the PS4 version. But it is very, very similar. The only real tangible difference is a slight reduction in foliage. So you'll see there's less grass, a few less leaves, some flowers have been taken out. But for the most part, these are visually quite one-to-one. A couple of lighting differences too. But the main thing is Kena's hair. This is quite clearly been DLSS'd, and whenever the camera moves around or Kena does a lot of movement, you can see a lot of shimmery hair. But they have done a pretty solid port visually with this one.
I have to say, this is a really visually impressive port, but I think we're both kind of dancing around the elephant in the room at this point.
Performance is kind of a problem here. So when you're playing it, you're going to feel it juddering around a little bit, and the reason it's doing that is Kena's not actually capped at 30 FPS, despite it most of the time being 30 FPS. So we've got a frame rate chart up here right now, and you'll see it tries to become 31 FPS, 34 FPS, and then every now and then it shoots all the way up to 60 and goes all the way back down to 30. And it's probably on a double buffer VSync, so when it's not 60, it goes down to 30. But it just creates a very juddery experience. I didn't notice this to begin with, because the beginning areas mostly run at 30, and then you get a bit further into the game, and it tries to be 60 more and more. It's a very odd experience. All of the actual cutscenes in this game are pre-rendered, though, and they're pre-rendered at 30. So if you're playing on PS5 in performance mode where it's 60 in gameplay, there is a juxtaposition on PS5 between the story and the gameplay. So having everything at 30 is actually quite nice. But not when it's so juddery like this.
Yeah, I find this to be interesting. This is something we're seeing a lot of Switch 2 developers do, where they don't necessarily want to cap the game at a lower frame rate, but just like with Hitman, locking this at 30 FPS would really help out here.
Yeah, and it's a really cool game. It feels like it comes out of the PS2 era. A lot of Star Fox Adventures flair to this. Some Tomb Raider Legend kind of feeling at times. It's a really cool game. And this is a great way to play it. It visually looks nice. If they cap the frame rate, it will play absolutely fine. And in handheld mode, which I played a bunch as well, it's quite good. I found the visual performance wasn't as jarring in handheld mode. That felt a lot more smooth. But visually, there are some more hits, further reductions. So we've got a docked and an undocked screenshot here, because we can't really do a whole lot of undocked screen capture. And you'll see that foliage is even more reduced in handheld mode than it is in docked mode, and that's coming from an even further reduction from PS5. And also, Kena's model is even more aliased in handheld mode, so if you turn her to face the camera, you're going to get a very blurry face. But in actuality, when you're playing the game, she's not facing the camera, and in cutscenes, that's pre-rendered anyway. So it's not going to look as jarring as this, and from behind she looks much better than she does from the front in terms of pixels. But it could definitely be a lot better than this. And I think you were touching on something a little bit there, Steve, where people have kind of rushed Switch 2 ports out. We know that many indie devs don't have dev kits, so I imagine that they probably got one recently and tried to get Kena on the market as soon as possible. And it's fairly good, but there's a lot of room for improvement here.
Yeah, this is stuff that could easily be fixed with updates down the line, so I'm hoping that they're able to make some of these patches, kind of smooth over some of these issues, because I think with a little bit more dev time, these would be issues that could be completely taken care of.
I'll also mention I turned motion blur off because it was not working very well with DLSS. If you swing that camera around, everything breaks up, so I'd recommend turning that to 0 for a clearer experience. Yeah, but with a few fixes, I think this would be up there with some of the best looking Switch games, because Kena's absolutely gorgeous. I got a little scene here where Kena's brushing back and forth against leaves as well, and it's still intact on Switch 2, where she can move all the leaves around just by touching them. So it's a very detailed game, and it's a great game too. So decent, but could be better.
All right, so yeah, we've got a handful of games. Let's Let's jump into Virtua Fighter 5 because that also released today as of the recording of this video. So Virtua Fighter 5, if you're not familiar with the history, is a PS3 game, and I played it on both Switch 2 and PS5. And let's get the performance out of the way. Virtua Fighter 5 performs flawlessly on Switch 2, as it should. It's a PlayStation 3 game. But when you stack it side by side with the PlayStation 5 version, you're going to notice some surprising cutbacks to the visuals here. Textures overall are far blurrier on Switch 2 than they are on PS5. Character models have a reduced level of detail. Lighting across the board takes a hit on Switch 2. I included in our footage a lot of the close-ups on characters because that's really where you're going to see the differences, particularly in lighting. One character that really struck me was Eileen. She looks very lifelike on PS5, and on Switch 2 she has that typical, like, I don't know how to say it, but like the downgraded face that we're used to seeing on Switch 1 ports. There's a lack of lighting. Her eyes don't have any catch lights in them. She kind of looks like a caricature of herself in it. But it's important to note that at the end of the day, Virtua Fighter 5 is a fighting game, and you're not going to be staring deep into the eyes of the characters most of the time. Particularly if you're playing this in handheld mode, it's just going to feel like Virtua Fighter 5. And when I initially played it on Switch 2, which is where I played it first, I was just like, hey, this looks like Virtua Fighter, feels like Virtua Fighter, performs like Virtua Fighter. And it wasn't until I got the PS5 version strictly for the purpose of this comparison that I was like, wow, there is some stuff that is missing. So if that's anything to go by, I think that if you only play the Switch 2 version, you'll probably not, be upset with the quality. But I think when you stack them side by side, it's really easy to notice the differences here.
Yeah, just pausing it sometimes, you can see that in motion, there's some breakup on the characters, which is quite strange. I think they're using DLSS. I think they said that before, which is odd for a PS3 port. And it's also odd that something Sega does quite frequently with Switch 2 ports, especially on the Atlas side, is they keep it at 1080p both in docked and handheld. And for Persona 3 Reload, they stated it was for parity, which is strange. Like no other publisher works that way.
There's a stage that causes issues on both consoles. On the PS5 and Switch 2, there's a stage in which you are on a log raft, and there's like a foggy forest far in the background, and you'll notice that there's a halo of like shimmering pixels around both combatants if you're looking into the distance. On PS5, it's a very small set of shimmering pixels. On Switch 2, it's very noticeable. It's like a large amount. And it's the one time that I was playing the game where something felt distracting. I think that's artifacting from some type of upscaling going on.
Yeah, and this is one that you'd expect to be a lot better than it is, but at least the game plays fine for the most part. But let's move on to a boringly cool one, which is Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. It's 4K, and it runs at 60 still, looks good. There's really nothing more to say about it. Like, you can zoom in all the way. It's problematic-free. There's no DLSS, there's no scaling going on. It's just a nice, raw 4K. Looks wonderful. I think that's all you can really say about this one. It's great.
The funny thing is, the clip that you got looks exactly like what Nintendo would put in an ad. Like, on the left, you have the Switch, and Mario looks kind of fuzzy. And then on the right, you have the Switch 2, and he's tack sharp. Like, exactly crystal clear, perfect to the render. And I think that's what we want to see with these. It's the best kind of boring.
Yeah. Let's also go on to, I said we have one Switch 1 game. That's not true. We've got another one. Let's do Tomodachi Life a moment, because this one's more of a funny comparison rather than a true raw one. We're putting it against the 3DS Tomodachi Life with the Switch living the dream. And it's mostly just seeing how far the game has come. So we're going from a 240p 3DS resolution all the way up to 1080p on the Switch 1. And food items look crisper, the meats look better, the environments are a lot more colorful and refined. it's just kind of cool to see rather than anything to take seriously.
Yeah, I love how your me has changed. You've changed your hair.
Oh yeah, my me's got a haircut over the years.
Yeah, but I said this in the preview. Tomodachi Life on the Switch 1 looks surprisingly sharp. I think that, you know, years of seeing the best and the worst of the original Switch has led me to have some biases. But what is on your face in this news clip, John?
Oh, that's Sonic.
Oh my
I
gosh,
put Sonic on his face. Do you not recognize the blue blur?
He might be a bit too much of a blur.
There is no Switch 2 versions, this is just Switch 1, and it runs at 30 FPS flawlessly most of the time. But there's one cutaway scene in the demo where it just caps itself at 20 FPS. And this is a cap, Switch 2 can't bypass it. And it's strange, it's just for that little clip. Otherwise, the game just runs flawlessly.
Yeah, I found that interesting too. It's one of the dreams. I won't say what, and I don't know if it's on screen or not, but I had that happen too. I played on Switch 2 as well, and it is strange that that's like a hard cap.
It does kind of add to the dreamlike nature to lose 10 frames. But let's go on to the other Switch 1 game, which is MLB.
Yes. My goodness. So we're talking about MLB The Show is a PlayStation Studios game. San Diego studio, to be specific. And apparently they don't have, or maybe didn't want to have Switch 2 dev kits. And I don't know how to say this nicely. MLB The Show looks really bad on Switch 1. It is just kind of a sorry version of MLB The Show. I don't know what the crossover is between people who are really into baseball and the Nintendo player base, but the game is there. And I will say it's admirable that it's there at all, and that it is mostly very performant. Moment to moment action feels fine. You're not going to suddenly see frame drops when you hit the ball or start rounding bases. It performs well. There are moments in specific cutaways where you might see the frames drop a little bit, but it's during non-gameplay segments. But there's an overall just lack of detail to everything in the Switch 1 version.
Yeah.
And I feel really badly putting the PS5 Pro up on screen next to the Switch 1 version of this game. Switch 2 confers absolutely zero benefits to the game, so you don't get better frame rate, you don't get better visuals. The best you can do is use boost mode to make it look better in handheld. But there's this when you have a runner on base, you'll actually see like a tiny visual feed of what the runner is doing, like if you want him to steal a base or something. This looks iffy on PS5 Pro, and on Switch 2, it looks like just a mass of pixels. Like that, you can't even really tell what you're looking at. So I think this almost feels like a case of like malicious compliance. Like Sony knew that they had committed to getting this game out on Switch, and so they made, the lowest fidelity version that they could while still being able to claim that they like put in the work. I don't know if maybe Nintendo intentionally withheld dev kits or Sony just chose not to so that the game would look far better on their own hardware. But yeah, the Switch is just not the place to buy this. Like 100% not. Get this on PS5 if you're going to play it.
It would have been easier for them to port the PS5 game, you'd think, to Switch 2. Because the MLB's been on the Switch 1 before, so it's probably largely recycled from previous years. But just in terms of port effort, just taking the current gen game and putting that on Switch 2, that sounds like it would have been a lot easier than doing another version from scratch. Well, let's move on to a game we've covered before, but I think we could have done it a lot better, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which got a paid Switch 2 edition that makes it 60 FPS, and they claim higher resolution, but I actually have my doubts about that. So we've shown it before in our handheld boost video, where it looks better, frankly, in boost mode than it does in just Switch 2 edition handheld mode. Because instead of a resolution bump, they seem to just put on some kind of upscaling that is not DLSS, and it looks a lot more like generative AI from 3 years ago, just kind of that blurred, smeared look. And we got a lot of comments saying, like, okay, it doesn't look good in handheld mode, but it looks fine in docked. And I want to just disprove that because we've got a lot of dock footage here where it definitely does not look fine. I'd say the scaler does a decent job at making close-up elements look clearer. Decent, not great. But when it comes to distant objects, or just anything further from the player character, it does a really poor job. So the opening shot here, we've got the mountainside, where on Switch 1, it's pixely, we've zoomed in a bit, it's definitely pixely. But on Switch 2, they've just smeared it into like a water painting. And if you look at the cliff edges, it's rough. Look further into the distance, it's even rougher. Things just get worse and worse and worse the further you get from the camera. And as we move on, we've got this look at New LA, we've got close up on the character. And I think if you look into the eyes, you can still see some smearing, even though he's really close to the camera. But it's the next cut that I'm interested in showing. If you look at the NPC walking towards both players, on Switch 1, if we zoom in on him, he's pixely, and all the other characters are quite pixely because we've zoomed in. But on Switch 2, it's literally become, I don't know how to describe this. It's smearing, it's moving all around. It's frankly bad.
It looks almost like, and I hate that people throw this term around, but it looks almost N64 quality, like how fuzzy it is.
Yeah, it's an N64 with a bad video signal. Yeah. And I went into another comparison where I haven't really zoomed in much at all. And I think you can see, even when flying in this scale right now, there's visual murkiness around the boost effect. And then our last scene is just going in first person around. And I think this showcases some of the benefits, because you are in 60 FPS, it is smoother, but it's also got all the drawbacks that the Wii U and the Switch game have, where pop-in is really, really intense in Xenoblade X, and whenever you approach a tree, when a tree's like a meter from you, it becomes its full model, which is quite distracting when you notice it, and they made no attempt to change that in the Switch 2 edition. So it's got all the drawbacks that have been there since Wii U. It's got very, very poor scaling, and the only saving grace is 60 FPS. But I mean, most of the time I will choose performance over visuals, but not when you ruin the image this much.
Yeah, it feels like they ran everything. I want to be clear. There's no way that it's running like a real-time generative or any other type of filter on the game.
But it looks like it.
but it does look like it. I would honestly wager that they fed everything in the game through an AI upscaler and just took the results and then used that to keep the texture sizes low and just bumped up the FPS. It feels like a real rush job. And like you said, I'm real big on 60 FPS being kind of the standard. If it can be achieved, it should be. But this is one of those cases where you really have to ask at what cost.
There's one specific scene in one of the opening cutscenes where the player character is standing over a cliff edge, and on Switch 1 you can see the aliasing around his legs, and that same aliasing is still there in the Switch 2 edition, which is partially why I feel there's no resolution boost. I think this is still running at 1080p. And in handheld mode, it might even be still running at 720p because there's such a gulf between boost mode and running the Switch 2 edition. So I think this is just the worst Switch 2 edition of the bunch, easily. Like, nothing gets close to how poor of a job this one is. Hopefully they fix it. If you make enough noise about it, hopefully they do fix it, because it shouldn't be this bad for a paid product.
No, I agree with you, and I think I might own every Switch 2 edition to date except for this one. So I just feel like with a game this big, it may have been better to hold off and do a better effort here than to just kind of put something out to capitalize on the performance of the console, because it feels like they went for the bullet points on paper, but didn't really give this as much attention as they should have. I don't think this was the way to get there, and I agree with you. Worst Switch 2 edition of the bunch so far, and that's saying something, because Jamboree TV exists.
Yeah, sucks for Monolith Soft too, because they're usually pushing the boundaries of what Nintendo systems can do visually. Like Xenoblade on the Wii is crazy, Xenoblade X on the Wii U is crazy, Xenoblade 3 on the Switch is crazy, and then they get their debut here, and it's just a complete miss. So that's a real shame. But at least hopefully they've seen people don't like this, and they stop using anything like that in the future. And when they actually do make their debut with a new game, hopefully there's no signs of any of this scaler.
Oh, please. Yeah, this is not the way to have your first game drop on new hardware.
But those are 6 different Switch and Switch 2 games looked at against either the previous generation or PS5. And for the most part, these are all pretty decent. Mario Wonder is great. Kenna's pretty good. Tomodachi Life, I mean, it looks great for a Switch 1 game. There's lots of big pros here, but also a mixed bag for a couple of these games.
Yeah, it is a shame. I think that I think that some of these games are great, like you said. Some not so great. Some inexplicably on Switch 1 when they should be on other hardware. But it's interesting to see kind of how developers are utilizing the Switch 2 and seeing what we come up with. I think, you know, the one I have the most hope for, like you said, is Kenna. I think a couple patches and that can be fantastic. But overall, you know, we're getting a huge variety of games on the console, and these 6 are just a small sampling of what's come out recently. And aside from Xenoblade X, I'd say most of them are still, you know, really great games that you can safely say are great portable versions. So, you know, with Xenoblade, maybe stick to the original.
Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. We'll have a lot more Switch 2 comparisons in the future. Maybe we'll do a few more compilations like this one. But we really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.